Good day, good people. My name is Brad King, and you are listening to and watching the Downtown Writers Jam video podcast, which is part of the Solid Listen podcast network. We're coming to you from deep inside the Jam bunker today on this really quite crappy day. I'm hopeful that this turns around. I will be in New York this weekend. We were in Philadelphia last weekend, hanging out with some writers from the program. Next weekend, we're going to see Laura Zlatos's play. And if you listen to the program, I had her on a few weeks ago. She's a playwright, taking like 8 or 9 writers to Experimental Playhouse. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we're hoping that the sun comes out and some of this gray and rain goes away. Super excited today. Back on the program, Jacqueline Friedland, whose book, He Gets That From Me, her third novel is out right now. And if you listen to the program, she's been on before. Her last book, That's Not a Thing, which I'm holding up right here for those of you that are listening. Was really hilarious and great. And I was super excited when this one came out because I love chatting with her. She is one of those lawyers that we have on the show. Graduate of the University of Pennsylvania and NY Law School. She practiced as a commercial litigator. And in the last episode, we talked about her work out at Boies, Schiller, and Flexner, who I came across when I was out at Wired. Wasn't a big fan of being a lawyer. She started teaching legal writing and lawyering skills and eventually decided that she wanted to be a writer. So she did what so many people do. She went back to graduate school, got a master's in fine arts from Sarah Lawrence College, which is the real deal, man. That's a great program. She also is the person, I don't know if we talked about it on air or off air, but she loves to exercise. And I did not want to go lift after our interview last time. And she was like, you always feel better when you go work out. A thing that I knew, but also it's like other exercise people will have that conversation. And that since then, anytime I don't want to work out, her little voice is in my head, which is both good and a little bit annoying. Got 4 kids, lives out in New York. She's fantastic. I'm going to hear a little bit about all that stuff. And they got 2 dogs, which we didn't talk about this time, but one of my favorite subjects. So this is good. I can't wait for you to hear her. And I hope you will go out and get the book. Before we get to that interview, a couple bits of business. So the Jam video podcasts come out on Monday and Friday. You can always find those on the Solid Listen Network YouTube channel. You can also find them over at thewritersjam.com. So in the Jam, our hour-long show comes out every Wednesday. Here's what I need you to do. If you listen to the program, head over to Apple Podcasts if you have an iPhone. If you don't have an iPhone, go to the Writers Jam on the Facebook page and leave us a review. That's the easiest way to help us spread the word about what we're doing. Also, think about people that like books in your life. I know you know some. Let them know what we're doing over here. We are trying to connect writers with new audiences, and we need your help to do that. If you're looking for books to read, we got book reviews. I'm like 5 or 6 or 10 behind, so we'll be putting some of those up. You can also click on the bookshop link on our page, and you can buy from local and independent bookstores across the country. Got a monthly newsletter. We won't hassle you. Just the little recommendations and things that are going to show up in your box. And you can support everybody on the ever-growing Solid Listen Network. Click on that Patreon button, and for I think $1 or $5 a month, you get commercial-free episodes, bonus content from everybody. And Malls and Nicole are like building this thing out. Chevy Stevens and I have a thing we're working on that we're going to debut in the first quarter of next year. Throw a little cash there and support what we're doing. Whether you do that or not, let me just say, I appreciate you taking the time to spend some time with us here in the bunker. I know the holiday season, no matter what and how you celebrate, is busy. December is batshit crazy all over the place. So thanks for spending some time here with us. I hope that your day is going well and you're finding ways to take care of yourself and the people around you. I hope this season brings you light and love and laughter, all of those things. And I hope right now that you'll sit back for the next 30 minutes or so and enjoy my conversation with Jacqueline Friedland.
So it's funny you should ask that, because this book, He Gets That From Me, was published in September. By the time the pandemic started, the book was mostly finished.
Oh.
So, there was like some editing, but it was not the same level of hard thought work that writing the initial draft was. So that went out to my publisher, and then there was copy editing and things like that, but and cover design, but the book itself was largely written. But I agreed, when the world seemed to be falling apart, it was very hard to be creative and produce. And what I did actually write another book.
Yeah, because you don't have a choice.
Right.
Like, I mean, they want you to keep writing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I actually returned to historical fiction, which was the genre I started in, because I really felt like I could research, and I had the mental wherewithal to be able to take in information, even though I wasn't yet at a place in the beginning where I could put out information.
Yeah.
So I researched this story of based on a true story of abolitionists in the North, and who fought against the Fugitive Slave Act, and built a relationship with a particular runaway slave, and how that all played out. And when I tell you that I was like reading old newspaper articles and, letters and book after book, and these rare books that I was ordering online, that are like falling apart and stuff. So I really jumped into the research for like a few months. And then when we kind of got into a routine, I was able to actually write. And but the other hard thing about writing during the pandemic was that I had my husband sitting behind me, and 99% of his job is talking on the phone. And for some reason, when you put him on the phone, he gets really loud.
My
like
friend
double
does
the
that.
volume of a normal human.
Yeah.
So I experimented with all different sorts of music in my ears. I find lyrics incredibly distracting, so I was like, oh, I'll just do the classical thing.
Yeah.
Also distracting. I'm
Yes.
to be distracted. So I ended up with bagpipes, Scottish classical music, and bagpipes, and it worked. And now it's like this Pavlovian response. The minute I hear bagpipes, I'm like, oh, I just had an idea of what to write.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yes.
But also, I used to write to music, not to lyrics, but to music. And I reached a certain age where if that stuff is in my ear, my brain can't get into the world I need to get into. And like, that's one of those demarcations, like, uh-oh.
Yeah, it's too much stimulation. That's the same, I've never been a person who can write in a coffee shop, or, even like I never studied in the library in college, because I'm just, the minute there's outside stimulation, I'm like, oh, well, that's more interesting than the thing I was looking at. And who are those people? And what are they doing? And why are they
100%. Yeah. So that must have been kind of comforting to have, he gets that for me mostly done in those early days, because at least for me, editing is less about thinking and more about understanding what's like, I don't have to create anything. The thing is already there. So now I'm just trying to sort of make meaning in here instead of out there, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
It was definitely, I was very glad for that, to know that book was finished and that it had a publication date, especially because my book that came out, at the beginning of the pandemic, came out at the beginning of the pandemic. There it is. That's not a thing. And that was rough. It came out so early in the pandemic that people didn't know yet about doing like a Zoom book launch, or, and any of that. It was all, and nobody was focused on books. We were all afraid we were all about to die. And, myself included, nor did I feel comfortable really, going out and promoting even just online, because it wasn't important compared to life and death scenarios. So,
I mean, I can't tell you how many authors I interviewed that would, we may have even talked about it, would be like, it's both the greatest thing I've ever done, and also I feel bad talking about it because, now we know 6 million people die, like all that stuff. You're like, like as just a feeling human being.
Right. Exactly.
Even though we have to keep going on, like that's sort of the most human thing that we do. I think that was not traumatic in the same way that the disease was, but like as an artist, I think that's why it was so hard for me to write, because it's like nothing matters.
Right. Exactly.
Like even though all of it still matters a great deal. What's that?
Just go hug the people who are important to you, but don't, because
and like stay inside, and just like you just sort of sat on the couch waiting. Like, this will be over, right? Like,
right. Yeah, that was it. It was waiting and just waiting.
Yeah, it's really and I've talked to some other folks, and then I want you to give me the synopsis of he gets that from me, but I've talked to other historical fiction authors I mean, not that that's what you do, but that you're returning to what you had done, who came up with some really interesting, they're like, I'm used to being able to go to the place where I'm going to go and sit in the place where I'm going to sit. And now I'm like on Google Maps and I'm like tracking down people in the town and calling them and asking them to like this. Like, what were some of the weirdest things that you did trying to recreate historical research from a den in New York?
Sure. So, well, one thing that we did that was very cool was we wanted to see my parents last Christmas time. And so we quarantined at home for 10 days, like literally no one left the house. No one was allowed in, nothing. And we then rented an RV and drove down to Florida. So that when we picked up the RV, they're like, oh, we'll give you a tour of how it works inside. I'm like, I can't go in there with you, stay back. And
give me the manual.
They're like, and PS, we never figured out how to work the heat and what we were freezing.
So this was like the Gridwald family Florida
exactly.
trip. Yeah.
But the book that I was working on, a portion of it takes place in Virginia. So we drove through Virginia and I was like, slow down, go, and it was helpful. Like I got to see the topography with my own eyes.
Yeah.
A little bit of that. And then the other main location in the book is Boston. And after my husband and I got vaccinated, we took a trip up to Boston and we didn't associate with anyone while we were there, but we walked the streets and we went to all of the sites and I was actually able to go and see those places in person. So
that's good.
That was very cool. And, I was totally geeking out in front of like statues. I'm like, that's the guy.
Yeah.
I sent a picture of him to my family, like group chat. And I'm like, who is that person? What is she doing? And aside from that, I found, part of why I wanted to write this particular story is because there's not much out there about it. And at a time when this particular runaway slave was, he had a court case in Boston and it was a national sensation and everybody knew about it up and down the coast. It was in all the newspapers. It was a household name. And now people are like, who, what? So I got very familiar with, there are these sites online where you can look at newspapers, it's like the microfiche that we used to do as kids in the library, and you can like move around the whole page. So I'm like printing document after document, taping pages back together, there was a lot of that. And also reading, I want to say theses, but I'm wondering if it's thesi that had been written by people in college and were in the libraries there that I was now able to access online. So it was all, 98% of it was in front of my computer, but it's amazing what you can find.
Yeah. How much did your legal background help? Were you like into those kinds of documents?
Yes, it actually helped a ton. It's funny, when I left the law and decided to write, I was like, I'm not going to be like a John Grisham. I'm not going to do those legal books.
I'm done with this.
Yeah, I'm out. I've escaped. Leave me alone. But so, first book, there's nothing with law. Second book, that's not a thing. I have my protagonist is a lawyer, but it's mainly like a foil that she hates her job, and that's it.
Yeah, that is not a big part of the story.
And then he gets that from me. There's legitimate custody issues and a novel legal question, and I found myself enjoying looking at it and playing with it and analyzing it. And then with this next book, about the runaway slave, I actually, relied on court documents and statutes and, really got deep into it. And I mean, and there's actually like a lot of scenes of courtroom drama, and it was great. And I completely, understood what I was doing in a new way. And there's a lot of the scenes with the courtroom drama actually are real, taken from transcripts of the court case, and it's the lawyers, real arguments. But then there's other stuff that I added to, hone in on certain points. And now when I'm reading drafts, I'm like, wait, did they say that or did I say that? So I feel very good about that. And I have to say, I'm also brainstorming my next book, and that one is like based on a Supreme Court case. So I guess, we don't know ourselves as well as we think we do. Yeah,
or we do. And like, it's why there's the thing, right? Like, as soon as you say you're never going to do a thing, that's like, well, I know what you're going to do next. Exactly. Right? Like, I'll never do that again. Like, I will bet that is you trying to break out of a pattern.
Exactly.
But also you did spend a lot of money getting that degree. So it is nice to also put some of that back to work after you left the work.
Yes. Yes, that's very true.
Yeah,
and I just connected with someone who reached out to me because he gets that from me, centers on surrogacy. And a woman who lives not far from me, who we know many people in common, reached out to me because she specializes in surrogacy law. And she just sort of heard about my book and kind of wanted to connect. And talking to her, I sort of started to think like, wow, your job actually sounds really interesting. And maybe had I had the maturity to like wait it out and stay in law for longer, and I could have ended up in a place like where this woman is professionally, maybe I would have liked law a little better. I don't know.
Yeah, because we talked like, because you were at Boys and Schiller, which we talked about last time, because I knew David Boys back in the Wired days and the post Microsoft Napster days. Yeah. So you've given me just a little bit of a taste. Like, what's the elevator pitch for He Gets That From Me? Although now I sort of, with the title and the two things you said, I'm like, oh, that's clever.
The elevator pitch is that the book is about a young woman who serves as a surrogate mother, only to discover 10 years after the fact that she accidentally gave away her own biological child.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
And that ties into a lot of stuff that's happening right now in the discussion of at the Supreme Court.
Yes.
I mean, it's different, but it's in that neighborhood of.
It's all fertility and body autonomy and reproductive rights. And it sure is.
Who knew you'd be topical?
Yeah.
You're both legal and topical. Not at all what you plan on doing with the writing career.
Well, I before I wrote this book, I was sort of trying to figure out as I finished, That's Not a Thing, what's the next book going to be about? And I was like playing with a few different ideas and sort of writing two stories simultaneously, waiting to see which one would grab me. And then I was going to kind of run with that. And as I was procrastinating and reading, People Magazine or some similar publication, I stumbled on this story of an American woman who served as a surrogate for a couple from China. And it was, supposed to be the genetic material from the Chinese couple, but she was just going to carry the babies for them. They ended up, they put in multiple embryos, and they believed she was carrying twins. And when the babies were born, one came out looking like the Chinese parents, and the other one came out appearing to be Black, like the surrogate's husband. And still, they sent both babies home with the Chinese couple because that was, what they thought. They just thought it was like, a little weird. But it nagged at everybody, and they finally did some testing, and it took about a month, and they sorted everything out. But it got me to thinking, first of all, how is that possible? And second of all, what if everybody had been the same race? They never would have known.
Yeah.
So, unless they did some testing or whatever. So that was like the impetus behind the book. And, the first thing I did, I was on Google and I was like, wait, women who are pregnant can get pregnant again? And yes, they can. It's just so incredibly rare that nobody bothers to mention it in ninth grade biology or health or whatever, wherever you were supposed to learn it.
I feel like every time you go to the doctor, that should be mentioned. Right? that feels like not a soup question. Like, that's a fairly important thing.
I actually think that a lot of fraternal twins are conceived at different times, and that it explains why the two babies will be different sizes, and there's just not really a way to prove it, and also it doesn't really matter if they're approximately the same size. So that, but there is conjecture.
Yeah, this is one of those things. Yeah, you'd never get IRB approval for any of those studies.
Right.
That's also fascinating. Like, my friend Elizabeth Spires just wrote a piece that has sparked a lot of discussion. She's an adoptee, and she was a founding editor at Gawker, and wrote this piece about adoption and about the trauma of adoption. She's adopted, and just sort of in response to that. And it got me thinking again about parentage, right? And I'm going to mess this up because it's been years, but there's something like some percentage that is above 1% of people who think that they know who their parents are don't know who their parents are. But we just don't do genetic testing. Yes. But as it turns out, humans may not necessarily be as monogamous as we think. And so this whole sort of construct of parenthood, community, all of those things is just the thing that we all sort of agree upon.
Right. We just accept it.
Yeah. And like go forward, because it's like, I feel like this is gonna. So that's really fascinating that sort of, I suspect that writing that book was I bet the research was fascinating.
It absolutely was. I can tell you, since the book has been out, I'm in a number of groups on Facebook for, readers, and I'm at different times trying to engage people. And one of the questions I asked in one of these groups was, have you ever done a commercial DNA test, and did you discover anything surprising? When I tell you the response after response after response of shocking, I discovered my uncle was my father, or
Yeah.
my brother was my uncle,
Yeah.
or, on and on. And that's just in this one little Facebook group with like a couple thousand members, so it really tells you, how much there is out there.
Yeah.
I personally have not done a DNA test because the more I researched the book, the less enthused I was about, opening that Pandora's box.
Yeah. You got a good, happy life, man. Like,
it's all good.
Just roll with that. Like, everybody's good. Like, yeah. My favorite stories are always like, for Christmas, we got mom and dad a genetic test to know their history. And it's like, 3 of the children are not dads. Like, it is just one of those crazy, but again, like, it sort of gets back to the pandemic thing weirdly, which is we have this construct that we believe society is a thing. And then like the pandemic hits and we're like, oh shit, everybody bought all the toilet paper. Like nobody's watching out for anybody. And when the genetic test came out, people were like really excited at first. And the more you get into it, you're like, I'm not sure this is actually really the most healthy thing for everybody to do. Not that I think that you should be lying to your family and stuff, but things happen. The world is a complicated place.
Yes, I agree. I do. I agree. And I have an author friend who published a book right around the same time that this book came out, and we did a few events together. And she's a former criminal defense attorney, and has said at like some of these events, that her advice also, there's no reason to put your genetic information out there.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing. I mean, we're happy that the BTK killer got caught because of that stuff, but that's not the norm.
Right. Exactly.
So he gets that from me. Now this story, that title now takes on like 5 different things just in this conversation. It's out now.
It is out now. It came out in September.
That's amazing. Like, did you get to do anything this time?
I did. And it was so fabulous. It was, especially poignant because it was sort of after having done nothing when the last book came out, and then also having done nothing just, in the time in between.
Right.
I was able to do multiple outdoor events. I did something at the Rye Library in New York. I did, there's a bookstore in Scarsdale Village that just, which is my town, which has the town put up a tent for, anyone who's going to be eating outside, and there's some picnic tables. So we were able to use the outdoor tent for an event.
That's great.
I've had a number of them, and it's been so nice to see people and to connect in person with readers.
Yeah.
And then I have done some Zoom events also, which has been cool because now everybody does understand for the most part how Zoom works.
Yeah.
And so, I was able to do like 100-person events.
Yeah.
On Zoom. And so it's been really, I've been enjoying it. I went out, I went as far as Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which is like a 2-hour drive from me.
Yeah.
For an in-person event. I thought when I was initially writing the book that I would get to go, like all over. And I actually, part of the book is set in Arizona, and I was super excited that I was going to be going to Sedona or Phoenix, but it didn't pan out.
Later.
Yes.
Yeah. You just have to set the next one back out there.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I'm excited that you got to do something. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I had a good time. For those that can't see, that's not a thing, which was the last book. And I'm really intrigued by he gets that from me now because it sounds like it's a different vein than the last book.
It's a little more serious.
Yeah, that sounds. It doesn't sound rom-commy.
No, although it sort of is. There is like a little bit of like a rom-com vibe, even though the questions asked are more difficult.
Yeah. Well, it is lovely to talk to you. I hope everything works out for your son. I hope that he graduates and all that works out.
Thank you so much.
And I hope when the next one comes out, you get to do way more outdoor stuff.
Thank you. Me too. With heaters.
Well, you guys have a great December and holiday season, and I hope I can talk to you again when the next one comes out.
All right. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, there you have it. That was Jacqueline Friedland, whose book, He Gets That From Me, is out right now. She is lovely and charming. I enjoyed this conversation as much as I enjoyed the last one. She's such a fascinating life. I know this is the short form, but if you're really interested, I'll link to the one we did earlier when That's Not a Thing came out. She's great. She's great. Listen to them both and buy both the books. That's my advice. Before we get out of here, just a couple reminders. If you like what you heard today, do those 2 favors we talked about at the top of the show. Leave us a review either on Apple Podcasts or over at the Facebook page. Tell your friends about us. While you're at it, don't forget to check out all the other programs on the Solid Listen Podcast Network, including the flagship Mother Mass Sleep with podcast with host and our Solid Listen podcast queen, Molly McLear. I'm telling you, the holiday season, if you haven't checked it out, it's the time to check it out. And if you have checked it out, you know the holiday season is the time to check it out. Don't forget the video podcasts come out on Mondays and Fridays on the Solid Listen Network YouTube channel. You can also catch them at the Writers Jam, and you can listen to the audio version wherever you listen to the Downtown Writers Jam. That program comes out every Wednesday. The surest way not to miss anything we do here in the bunker, get yourself subscribed. And remember, you can always catch us on Twitter and Instagram at the Writers Jam. Until the next time, I will see you around the internet. And Die Hard is a Christmas movie.